Hello, sir. Have you seen anyone as old as 300 years before? Roxy asked. Joshua laughed at him and replied, Of course. No one on earth can live up to that age. There only existed such during the days of Methuselah. How about I take you and your guest to see a healthy-looking old woman aged 300 years? On the seventh day, during the naming ceremony, the whole village gathered at Alao's house to rejoice with him. He named his child Anike because she was a child to be treasured and she had brought him wealth. As fate would have it, Alao and Ilori's lives took a different and unexplainable turn afterward. Villagers who once shunned Alao now invited him and his wife to grace their occasions. They became the talk of the town. Alao bought land, owned a palm plantation, and became a very rich man in the village. As their child Anike grew older, their lives became more colorful. But as she grew older, Alao noticed something very strange. He observed that whenever Anike was beaten or scolded as a child, and she cried or got angry, his businesses would suffer losses, and his wealth would decrease. Conversely, whenever Anike was treated well and made happy, everything about his business and family blossomed. One day, at age 5, while Anike was playing with other children in the village, her mother called her several times, but she didn't heed the call. Out of anger, Ilori dragged her into the house and gave her a knock on her head. Anike wept bitterly and fell ill the next day. Her temperature went abnormally high, and they all panicked. They took her to the village herbalist, but after all herbs were administered, Anike remained sick. Out of fear, they rushed her to a powerful spiritualist who told them to return home, apologize to her, and pamper her like never before. Alao and Ilori did as instructed. They bought her many things to eat and ensured she was happy. Gradually, Anike got well and became happy again. Alao noticed that his business had declined during those few days and suddenly improved once Anike recovered and was happy. From those experiences, he realized Anike was a very special child who needed to be treasured. From that day onward, he did everything within his capacity to ensure she never got angry or sad. He vowed to always care for her and cherish her as a precious jewel. Anike became like an egg that must be carefully cared for. They knew their daughter was special and different from other children in the village. Though they didn't fully understand the details, they were only certain she brought them good luck and prosperity. As Anike grew older, many strange things began to occur. At age 10, she started seeing things that physical eyes couldn't see. One day, while at her mother's shop, where she sold beautiful indigenous Yoruba hand-woven traditional clothes called ashofi, a young lady named Tanwa walked in to buy a beautiful ashofi for her wedding ceremony. Immediately, Anike approached her and warned her never to continue with the wedding. "Auntie, please, don't marry the man you want to marry," Anike declared with a firm voice. Tanwa felt insulted by Anike's comments and warned her to stay out of her matter. Tanwa went ahead with her wedding, but shortly afterwards, she began to lose her joy as her mother-in-law frustrated her marriage. She had a stillbirth and several miscarriages. Her mother-in-law mocked her and called her an empty basket that couldn't hold water. She forced her son to marry someone else, and the marriage became a living hell for Tanwa. Nothing she did was pleasing to her husband or mother-in-law. The new wife conceived immediately and gave birth to a bouncing baby boy, which made Tanwa's husband neglect her completely. He stopped sleeping with her and even forgot that he had her as a wife. In the end, Tanwa regretted not listening to Anike's advice, as she continued to face the pain in her marriage alone. Anike continued to give spiritual guidance to people. Some heeded, while those who discarded it blamed themselves later. The news of her spiritual capabilities spread throughout the whole village, and many people from far and wide sought her guidance over troubling issues. Anike grew into a very special, powerful, and reverend woman in her village. She was just like her father, filled with joy, and always had an affectionate smile that shined brightly on her face. She was loving, caring, homely, and indeed a unique woman. Her uniqueness attracted all and sundry to her, so much that everyone wished to be around her. She was more like a rare gem sought after by many. Almost all the men in the village wanted her as a wife. As an adult, Anike grew more beautiful and became the object of every man's desire. She met Dari, a young, hard-working man in the village. Dari had shown so much care and love towards her, and being a loving and nice man, Anike agreed to marry him. Her parents gave their support, and they had a glorious wedding ceremony. Anike, who had helped so many people out of their problems, was unable to help herself. 5 years into her marriage, she couldn't conceive. Her mother-in-law frustrated her and threatened to send her packing out of her son's house. All Anike and her husband's effort to have a child remained abortive. Amidst all the problems, her husband stood firmly behind her. Even when his mother threatened to disown him if he refused to send Anike away and take in a fertile woman, Dari refused. Whenever his mother scolded him to send his wife away, he would reply, "Mama, I married my wife because I love her. And most importantly, she's not a baby maker. If our Creator pleases, she will have a baby, and if otherwise, she will still remain my beloved wife. Dear mother, desist from frustrating her peace and let her be." Dari stood by his wife with all his might and did everything to make her happy. One day, Anike approached him and asked, "Why do you love me this much and protect me from all forms of abuse from your mother?" She asked. In response, Dari said, "Many waters cannot quench love, and the floods can't drown it. My love for you is true, and it can't be quenched by anyone or any form of challenges. I love you no matter what. My husband, you've been so loving, and I can't thank you enough. I wonder what I would have done without you by my side. Thank you for always making me happy." She replied. Anike and her husband continued trying every effort to conceive, but all were abortive. Yet, she continued offering spiritual guidance to those in need, solving their problems but unable to solve hers. Because she had helped several women to conceive, villagers began wondering why she could solve people's problems but was unable to solve hers. One day, she felt downcast and began to wonder, how can I be an instrument for solving other people's problems? Yet, my own mountain refuses to be moved. Instead, it keeps staring at me and mocking me. She felt sad and wept bitterly. Then she fell into a deep sleep where she had a strange revelation. In a dream, she saw an old man talking to her and teaching her more about spirituality. At the end, the old man told her to always stay joyful and never allow her situation to cause her sadness, as sadness isn't good for her spiritual well-being. You are a special child, a child of great destiny. For no reason should you curse anyone with your mouth. Do everything to avoid being sad, he said. Anike woke up from her sleep and wondered how such a revelation had solved her dire need for a child. Nonetheless, she tried hard to remain joyful amidst her trying times. Several years went by, and Anike never for a second conceived. Years passed, but nothing changed. When she turned 50, she humbly approached her husband for a discussion. My husband, thank you for your patience over the years. I'm now 50 years of age, and we are both not getting younger. Please, permit me to get you a maiden so you can have a child on earth. I don't want your name to disappear just like that. What? Why would you say such a thing? I wasn't complaining. Neither am I planning to complain anytime soon. If the Creator doesn't want us to have a child, so be it. Anike persuaded him to heed her words, but he remained obstinate. You see, bringing a second woman into this house is just like bringing in trouble for yourself. A polygamous home is not always peaceful. Anike, my love, please, erase your thought from getting me a second wife. Anike refused to give up. She continued persuading her husband to take in another wife and promised him that their home would be peaceful. Dare refused vehemently, and Anike began wearing a sad countenance. She knew her husband didn't like to see her sad. Dario could no longer endure seeing her unhappy, so he gave in to her demands. Anike searched the village for a maiden with a good conduct and found Anike, who appeared calm, responsible, and respectful. Anike gladly accepted Anike's offer and became Dari's second wife. Though Dari wasn't happy, he had no other choice than to make his wife happy. He married Anike, and luckily, she conceived 3 months later. Anike's joy was boundless. She showered love on Anike and took care of her like a daughter. Anike enjoyed special treatment throughout her pregnancy and finally gave birth to a bouncy baby boy. The news of her delivery made Anike extremely excited. The baby was named Ayodele, meaning joy has arrived home. Anike cared for Ayodele like her own child and treated Anike and her son as her own flesh and blood. Ayodele, in turn, grew to love Anike and always wanted to stay by her side. However, his mother, Anike, grew furious and began to wonder if Anike had used her powers to endear Ayodele's heart to herself. Anike couldn't bear her son being overly attached to someone else and distanced from her. Gradually, her bore resentment towards Anike. Often, she would scold Ayodele for staying in Anike's room. One day, While Ayodele was having his usual good time with Anike, Enito returned from the market and found him absent in her room. She screamed his name repeatedly but got no response. After a few moments of shouting, Ayodele ran out from Anike's room to answer his mother's call. Enito, already angry due to his delayed response, became even angrier seeing him come out of Anike's room. She bounced on him and beat him mercilessly. "How dare you disobey me? I am your mother. Haven't I told you to stop going into her room? Are you now deaf? I can't obey a simple order?" Enito screamed as she continued beating her son. Anike, who was inside her room, overheard everything and felt terribly bad. She began to wonder what had made Enito detest her so much. Despite Enito's growing disrespect, Anike remained calm and tried her best never to get angry, enduring her behavior and still showing love like a mother. Enito was cautioned by Dari, but she never changed. Her greatest pain was that her son loved Anike more than her, fearing Anike might use her power to claim him as her own. Nevertheless, Ayodele never stopped staying with Anike. He loved her and felt at peace with her. One day, after spending time with Anike and listening to her tales about the value of goodness, Ayodele thanked her before returning to his mother's room. Unfortunately, Ayodele fell terribly ill the next day, causing panic as he wasn't responding to treatment. Enito, furious, accused Anike of being the cause of her son's sickness. She confronted Anike in her room. "Wicked witch, come outside. You have killed your children in the spirit world, and that's why you are unable to give birth here on earth. But now, you want to kill my only son? I will never allow such to happen. If anything happens to my son, I will ensure I kill you with every single strength within me. You wicked witch." Enito screamed. Anike felt the greatest pain of her life. No one had ever insulted her like this or called her a witch for no reason. She locked herself indoors and wept bitterly, regretting not listening to her husband's advice. From that day onward, Anike lost her joy and became sad and depressed. Dari tried everything to make her happy, but his efforts were fruitless. Ayodele got well after a few days, but Enito never stopped fighting Anike. She continued to insult her, calling her all sorts of bad names. When Dari or when anyone tried to caution her, she would insult them too. One bad day, during one of her usual episodes of insulting Anike, Anike got really frustrated and did the unexpected. "Useless witch, destiny destroyer, may the gods punish you beyond expectation." "Witch!" Enito screamed. For the first time, Anike responded in anger. "Ha! Enito, I brought you into my house and this is how you repay me? I decree today that it shall not be well with you." Anike cursed Enito, forgetting the warning she had received in her dream. After that day, villagers who sought Anike for spiritual issues found no solutions. The news spread that Anike had lost her powers. Villagers stopped visiting her for spiritual help and mocked her, calling her an empty barrel. Dari observed the changes in his beloved wife and transferred his aggression to Enito. He became cold towards her and refused to touch her. Years went by and Enito felt neglected. "I'm still very young. I can still find someone else to marry me instead of wasting my life here with an old man and an old witch," Eniton said. The next month, Eniton packed her belongings, took a sword, and moved out of her husband's house. Unfortunately, a few months after she moved out, she lost Ayodele to the cold hands of death. She wept bitterly as she mourned her son, and out of anger, cursed while grieving. "Ah, Ayodele me, my only son, who did this to me? I declare that the person who killed my son will struggle all life, searching for death but will not see. He or she will beg for death but will never see or smell death." Eniton lived the rest of her life miserable. She searched for love but found none. No man in the village even looked at her twice. She lived a lonely life, filled with regrets until she died at 70 years. Anike, on the other hand, continued living a sad life. She lost her total joy. Villagers who used to love her now disliked her. She continued living with her beloved husband until he died at the age of 100. After her husband's death, she became even lonelier and desperately wished to leave this world. But she continued living. Though she was old, she was healthier and stronger. She tried everything she could, even adding dangerous substances to her food several times. But she lived. Anike hated every day she lived and wished she could just disappear from this world. But all her efforts were fruitless. Little children in the village began to call her a witch. Some villagers would gossip about her, saying maybe she wanted to become immortal. Anike cried and wished for her breath to be taken. But the more she wished for it, the longer she lived. Many generations passed, yet Anike continued living at 300 years of age. Some of the village chiefs who grew to know her story sarcastically suggested they turn her into a god and start worshipping her. Some of the villagers feared her, and many parents warned their children never to go close to her. A few other stubborn children went to her house, singing mockery songs to her. Anike awaye maku, Anike àjèjì obìnrin, Anike awaye maku, Anike àjèjì obìnrin. Meaning, Anike the immortal, Anike the strange woman. Children sang and laughed at her, but all she did was stare at them and mind her business. Anike was deserted by all the villagers and grew tired of her situation. She decided to stop trying to find death until death found her. In the village, there was a very young orphan named Roti. Roti was a great-grandchild of one of the families whom Anike had helped to conceive while she was young and operated in a spiritual capacity. Roti, being very smart, brilliant and inquisitive, took time to dig deep into his background and understood from his story that Anike had helped his great-grandparents to conceive. So, he began moving closer to Anike to learn more about her story. He started showing her care and showed up for her almost every day. Villagers laughed at him and called him stupid for going closer to a cursed woman. After some months, Roti had the opportunity to travel to the city, and there he learned about tourism. It took ample time to gather more information about tourism and what amused the tourists. While inside a car park one day, he saw some white men speaking with a learned black man named Joshua, who stood as an interpreter for them. After a while, he approached Joshua and told him about what he had for them. "Hello, sir. Have you seen anyone as old as 300 years before?" Lottie asked. Joshua laughed at him and replied, "Of course, no one on earth can live up to that age. There only existed such during the days of Methuselah. How about I take you and your guest to see a healthy-looking old woman aged 300 years?" Joshua never believed him, so he relayed the information to the white men, who were so excited to have a look. Yes, we are interested. We would love to see her at any cost," the white men exclaimed. Without wasting time, they booked an appointment with Lottie, and the following weekend, they all traveled to Lottie's village. Upon getting to Anike's house, the white men and Joshua were all surprised to see the old Anike. While they were speaking in English, trying to ask her some questions, Anike shocked them when she told the interpreter to stop stressing himself to interpret the English language. And so, she began to respond to all the white men's questions in English. All of them were awestruck to know that she understood English and spoke fluently. The most shocking aspect was that she could read and write without anyone teaching her. The news of Anike's proficiency in the English language spread throughout the whole village. Both villagers and tourists wondered how she was able to communicate fluently in English without going to school, because there was no Western education during her childhood. But only Anike knew the secret behind her language fluency. She could speak several languages without being taught by any human. She spoke French when some Frenchmen visited, spoke Chinese, and many more languages. Anike had received a unique revelation at age 13, where she dreamt and saw an invisible being dropping a white calabash as white as snow and pure as crystal upon her head. Suddenly, the calabash disappeared into her head. As she stood there, wondering what sort of encounter she had, she heard a loud voice speaking to her. "Anike, do not fret. You have been given the spirit of wisdom and knowledge. From now on, you will be wiser than your elders. Go and operate in the knowledge of this reality." When she woke up from her sleep, she could only wonder about it, but never revealed the dream to her parents or anyone. This wisdom and knowledge had made her speak different languages without struggling, and given her the ability to see beyond the future, know beyond the natural, and solve spiritual issues. With time, Anike became a tourist attraction for all. Lottie, recognizing an opportunity, started charging visitors and tourists money to see her. Her story spread across the country, and foreigners did everything to visit her village, to see and hear from her. Anike, though living a sad life, paid attention to all visitors and answered all their questions. During one of the sessions, 2 British men visited, and one asked about her greatest regret in life. Anike heaved a prolonged sigh and said, "My greatest regret was that I didn't listen to my husband when he warned me against taking in another wife for him. I have the strong belief that if I had listened to him and waited, I would have had my biological child, and perhaps wouldn't have been alive today as your tourist attraction. You see, one single wrong decision can wreck a destiny. That is my regret." She continued, "I know you may want to ask about my pain and joy. Well, my pain is that I married a second wife for my husband, and that decision alone cost me my joy. So, don't wait to hear about my joy, for I have none. My story is deep and weird because I know I am a special child. In fact, It may even sound unrealistic to you, but that's what it is. But what could your greatest wish be? One of the men asked. She smiled and replied, "That seems like a very dumb question. You should know that my greatest wish now is to leave this earth. After all, there's nothing here to live for. The only thing that could restore my joy is death. It seems I'm the oldest human on earth, so I have no more business here. If you have anything that could help bring my wish to pass, I would appreciate you." I hope you enjoyed this part of the story. Kindly subscribe and stay tuned for part 3. Click the notification bell to get notified and be the first to watch it. Thanks for always watching. See you in the next part. Bye.